Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hi. Hey, Deborah. Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Nina.
Hi, Nina. There you go. Hey, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Let's see. Michelle, would you mind spotlighting me?
Of course.
At Pascal.
Ah, thank you. Happy Thursday. Thanks for joining me tonight. How's everyone? Let me come over and just see a few. Okay. Do we have anyone cooking along with me? I'm not sure if anybody will be joining me. Deborah, are you? Yeah, wonderful. Are you making all of the recipes?
Nope, I'm making the soup and the tofu.
Okay, beautiful. So the soup will get started as our second recipe, and then we'll move into the tofu. We'll be going back and forth, so that actually pairs nicely.
Okay.
Nina, yeah, totally. So Michelle will be linking the recipes in the chat as we move along. Also, they're available at uniteforher.org/food-for-thought. So all of my recipes and all of Aubrey's recipes are available right there now. So you're welcome to hop over there and grab them early. But we've got some great recipes. Okay, I'm gonna move my screen. Okay, wonderful. So it is 6:01, so I'm gonna get started. I'm so excited to have everyone here with me. And of course, I feel like the band has gotten back together with having Michelle as my co-host. So I'm so excited to be here for my Cooking with Cruciferous cooking class this evening. So we actually have 4 recipes that we'll be moving through. Deborah is cooking along, so know that you can join us again and cook along for any or all of these recipes as well, but certainly we want you to try them on your own. So before we jump into the recipes, if you've joined us before, you know that we like to start off our cooking classes with a food for thought moment. So this is just a way that we can highlight one of the ingredients that we're utilizing and just share a little bit about the nutrition behind it. So I've got 2 food for thoughts that I'll be covering. Before I jump in, a couple housekeeping reminders. Please keep yourself on mute. Deborah, if you have any questions as you work through, welcome to come off of mute or put them in the chat. Michelle will be monitoring. Also, we're recording tonight's class, so you're welcome to come back and rewatch if you need any additional instructions. So jumping into our food for thought, first thing I want to do is, you know how much we are appreciative of our education sponsors. So our food for thought moment is brought to you by Merck tonight, who is just supportive of our entire education platform. So we are so grateful for them. And tonight, like I said, I have 2 quick points that I want to go over. So the first, I want to highlight the cruciferous vegetable family because I am cooking with cruciferous. So the cruciferous vegetable family includes many vegetables that we talk about and we know in the cancer space do a lot to support cancer fighting, reducing risk, just overall anti-inflammatory compounds. So the cruciferous vegetables include things like broccoli, cauliflower, collards, watercress, bok choy, kohlrabi, turnips, arugula, radishes, horseradish, wasabi, and all different types of cabbage. And the component that we attribute so much to the healthful benefits is what's called sulforaphane. So sulforaphane is also what gives cruciferous vegetables that lovely aroma that we probably are so familiar with, but it really is so beneficial. It's a sulfur compound. So sulforaphane has been linked to a lot of different health benefits, preventing cellular DNA damage, fighting cancer, activating our own immune system to fight against pollutants and different pathogens. It supports our liver's natural detox pathways. So when we talk about how we can naturally support our liver's ability to detox the body, incorporating cruciferous vegetables is at the top of that list. And then they've been linked to fight against both breast and prostate cancer. So lots of health benefits. We've got a wide array that we are utilizing. So as you're looking to increase your vegetable intake, know that incorporating cruciferous in that mix is a really wonderful addition. For tonight, however, I will be highlighting one of the other vegetables that I will be using, and it is Swiss chard. So what you see in front of is Swiss chard leaves, which we are using in our soup recipe. So Swiss chard is also known as silver beet or Roman kale or strawberry spinach. And it actually belongs to the goose foot family of vegetables, which includes both beets and spinach. And although the name may appear that this leafy green was originated in Switzerland, it's actually native to the Mediterranean. So you will find often Swiss chard in a lot of different Mediterranean, European type recipes. And that includes our Swiss chard and potato recipe. So this is an excellent source of nutrition. First and foremost, Swiss chard is wildly high in vitamins K, A, C, and magnesium. It's also a very good source of iron, copper, potassium, calcium, and vitamin E. So Swiss chard is known to support blood pressure. First, because it's got all of those blood pressure nutrients, potassium, magnesium, and it also is a really great source of nitrates. So sometimes we hear about nitrates in things like our alcoholic beverages that may not be so good for us, but the nitrates that we find naturally in things like beets and Swiss chard, when they are naturally occurring, they turn into nitric acid. Nitric acid helps to widen blood vessels, which helps to increase blood flow. And in doing so, it supports blood pressure, it helps to improve lung function, and overall, it helps strengthen muscle contraction. So many benefits to those foods that contain natural nitrates. So because it's so high also in vitamin K, Swiss chard also supports bone health. And in fact, 1 cup of vitamin K will give us 300% our daily value of vitamin K. So it's amazing. It's also a great source of antioxidants like polyphenols, which include vitamin C, vitamin E, and carotenoids like beta carotene. So we know that they all help to fight free radical damage. And then it also contains flavonoids, quercetin, and camphorol. And camphorol is a wildly powerful and anti-inflammatory antioxidant that may and has been shown in some studies to have anti-cancer or cancer-reducing properties. It's also finally a great source of ALA, which is alpha lipoic acid, which is another antioxidant that actually has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and helps to lower glucose levels. So much nutrition that you find in this lovely little leafy green that we will be using for our soup. And while the Swiss chard that we're using has a red stem, you can find it in a variety of colors. So you can find just traditional Swiss chard that may also have a green stem, but also be on the lookout for things like rainbow chard. So when you get a bunch, it's got this beautiful variety of colors, orange and yellow and white and red and purple and green. And it truly is a rainbow. So really wonderful. We're using the entire leaf today. So we're using the stem and the leaves or the entire plant. So no waste to be found here. So I'm going to set this aside. We'll come back to this when we start our soup. But that is our food for thought moment. Any questions before I get started with our first recipe? Okay. And Deborah, I will cue you once we get started. But first, the first recipe that we will be making is a hard roasted spiced cauliflower. Cauliflower is our cruciferous vegetable. So let me show you what we have here. So this is a really great demonstration. If you are not familiar with roasting vegetables, it's a great way to add flavor. And I love this spice mixture because I think it's really unique and it has wonderful nutritional properties. So the first thing I did is I prepped all of my cauliflower. So this is 1 large head of cauliflower. I cut into little florets that you'll see here. I also have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. So I've got a little parchment for easy cleanup. If you don't have parchment, certainly you can just roast on a baking sheet that you want. But we're gonna get started with a little bit of spice. So before I get into that, first, I have some extra virgin olive oil that I will use here. So I'm going to bring my florets together. And we'll just start by drizzling some olive oil. And this will help all of those beautiful spices to adhere to our cauliflower. And then we've got a beautiful mix here. So we've got some, of course, Michelle, right? Cloves of garlic here. So I've got 4 cloves of garlic. Michelle, I was laughing. If you hopped on for our virtual hangout last night in Michelle's recipe, she used a recipe that called for 1 clove of garlic, which in a De Cristofaro household means 4. I feel you with that. So I love that. I've got some garlic here. Then I've got some turmeric. I have coriander, fennel seed, and crushed red pepper flakes. So a little bit of spice, a little bit of heat. Certainly, if you have sensitivity to heat or you are dealing with some oral issues from chemotherapy, you could certainly leave the heat out altogether. So I'm going to remove my garlic because I'll use my microplane to grate them. And then we'll just kind of shimmy our herbs all over, and we will ultimately be using our hands to get them dirty. So I'm using, again, one of my favorite kitchen tools is a microplane to grate my garlic. You could certainly mince this by hand. You could also use a garlic press, which would be great. You can also find garlic in a tube. So that's a really great convenience ingredient. You can find it in many produce sections of the grocery store. That would be the equivalent of this as well. We love this. Okay. So all of my garlic, and then using our clean hands, we just want to get everything really well mixed together. This is a great opportunity if you have young people in the house or kiddos that want to cook along with you. Let them get their hands dirty, right? And let them get everything mixed. What you'll start to see at the bottom here is maybe some of those fennel seeds are collecting. So grab them, make sure they're really well covered here. We want everything. Yeah, I got some of these spicy. And this is just, you know, if you're used to using a little bit of salt, pepper, maybe your favorite dried herb mixture in roasting your vegetables, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But this is a really great way to, and I'm going to clean my hands because I am going to add a little salt, pepper to this. This is a really great way to kind of change up your flavors that you're using. And we know that anytime we're using turmeric to increase the bioavailability of the active ingredient that we know has so many healthful benefits, curcumin, we want to make sure we're incorporating black pepper in it. So making it, love that, Deborah, good. And then a little bit of salt. I'll give this one final mix. And into the oven, this will go. Like I said, 400 degrees, middle rack of your oven. And we'll start with 15 minutes. We'll give this a little shake. And then I usually roast for an additional 15 minutes. But you can leave it in to your degree of doneness. So if you'd like it a little bit more done, maybe 20 minutes is good for you. You may want to pull back a little bit depending on your oven. Maybe it's 10 minutes. So you can really just keep an eyeball and pull it out whenever you're ready. So I'm going to pop this in the oven and I will be right back. I also am going to wash my hands again. Okay.
Erin, would this recipe work well with another cruciferous vegetable like Brussels sprouts or broccoli?
Absolutely. So great question. You can use the same mixture of herbs with almost any type of recipe or any type of vegetable that you would want to roast. So broccoli, absolutely. I even think things like potatoes, it would be great. If you're cut up some raw beets and you're roasting them, give this a mix as well. So use the spice blends to really create really delicious flavor for any type of vegetable that you're going to roast. Absolutely. Love that. Okay, so I set my timer 15 minutes. Once that goes off, we'll check on that. And then I'll show you what that looks like when we're done. So let's move on to our next recipe. I'm going to move this dish out of the way. And Deborah, this is your cue. We're going to start with the soup. So this is where the Swiss chard comes into play. Swiss chard and potato soup. So you heard in my food for thought moment that Swiss chard is found primarily in a lot of Mediterranean dishes. And this soup was built off of a Swiss chard and potato recipe soup that I grew up enjoying. So for anybody that follows or is familiar with Lydia Bostonici, who is the Italian chef, Michelle, I'm sure you're familiar with her. She makes a Swiss chard and potato stovetop recipe that, like I said, I just grew up eating. And so this was sort of something that spun out of that recipe, and it's really, really delicious. So let's get started making it. I'm using a soup pot here. So I'll turn this on. Medium heat, we just want to bring it to warm. And we'll start by heating 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So we'll add this, right? And the first thing that will go in is some onion. So I have one, this was a small Vidalia onion. Any type of onion would do well, a Spanish onion, white onion, a sweet onion, sort of an all-purpose kitchen onion, whatever you had would be absolutely fine. So we're gonna start by sauteing this. The other thing that we will add, so I'm gonna get my onions in first. We'll just let them start to get warm. What else we're adding in with the onions are the Swiss chard stems. So I'm gonna take these few leaves that I was demoing with, and I'm just gonna prep them. So the leaves pull apart from the stems really nicely. And we're adding them in early. We're adding the stems in early because, you know, they tend to require a little bit more time to cook. So I'm cutting them to about 1/2 inch thick. You don't have to be too particular about it. Whoops.
Erin, I spoke with one of our members today.
Yep.
And she said she pickled her Swiss chard stems.
Oh,
I know. I know.
really?
Yeah.
That sounds delicious. Were they
Yeah.
were they with any other type of vegetable, or were they on their own?
They were on their own.
I love that.
So there you
Oh my
go.
gosh, that's great. All right, so we're going to throw them in, and that's a really great way. I mean, pickling anything. Thank you, Michelle. So you should be able to see a little bit of this, what's going on here. So we've got our onions and we've got our Swiss chard stems. And if you get some leaves in there, it's no big deal. But we're going to let these start to cook together and soften. And the red, we know, may start to bleed out into the onions. It's no big deal. And then I'm just going to take my leaves and give them a rough chop. You could absolutely use your hands and just tear them, but the point is we want them to be a little bit smaller into bite-sized pieces so that they fit well on a soup spoon. So this will go in. And at the end of this recipe, this is my Swiss chard leaves that you see are all cut up. And we'll add these at the end. They just really quickly together. So that's why, and just like any other type of leafy green, you can cook these down. Now, with that being said, if you don't have Swiss chard, but maybe you have some spinach, you could substitute with that as well. Or if you have some kale, you could substitute with that as well. If it's spinach, you may not be using the leaves, you may not be using the stems, so just add the leaves at the end. With kale, you could very well separate the stems, cut them up, and add them in if you wanted to, or just use those leaves as well. So there's a lot of versatility with this particular recipe that you can add depending on what you have. So we'll just let this continue to saute. Just to start to tenderize a little bit. Okay, let me get my next ingredients, which are over here. So we have some garlic, we've got some tomato paste that'll go in. I've got, again, I think the recipe calls for 3 cloves of garlic, but I have 4 because they were small and we love garlic in this household. And then I have some tomato paste, and then we're adding, like I said, some potatoes. And then we're using vegetable broth for this recipe as well. So we'll need 6 cups of that. All right. So as these start to soften, oh my gosh, it's already smelling good. Good. All right, next on our list, let's add our garlic. So again, I'm reaching for that microplane. Thanks, Michelle. And I will start to grate all of my garlic. Actually, let me get the whole thing over here. So again, same concept. You can use as much garlic as you want. You can use garlic paste. And if you don't have a microplane, by hand or a press is fine. And honestly, if you just want to use garlic powder, you can do that as well. I'd be hesitant to use garlic salt because we want to control the amount of salt that goes in here. But there we go. Perfect. Great. Okay, so that's in. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. So this is a brothy, tomato-centric soup recipe. So we're adding our tomato paste first so that it can start to warm and it will start to cook and brown a little bit. So it's very bright red, our tomato paste. It will start to darken into like a maroon color, which is what you want. So we'll just let that go for a little bit. Keep stirring. Love that. And this does make a lot. So know that you can freeze this really well. It's great for leftovers. So this is something that truly just gets better as the days go on. Okay. And then lastly, before we add our broth, we're going to add our potatoes. And I like to add our potatoes before we add our broth so that they can start to heat through and start to take up some of that onion tomato flavor. So what I have here are some cut up red potatoes that I had at the grocery store. You'll see I left the skin on for a little additional fiber. I did clean the outside. And so the recipe calls for 6 smallish red potatoes. This is a little bit more than that. I had some leftover from something else that I was making. So use what you have. And then we'll give this a stir. We want our potatoes to be as well coated as we can to take up all this beautiful flavor. Love this. And then we'll add our broth. So I'm gonna let this go. We'll talk a little bit about our broth here. Okay. So while we let those go, I do want to check in with Deborah. I want to see how she's doing with getting her soup started as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about our broth that we're using. So Deborah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I pre-cut everything in advance. I didn't realize I was supposed to separate the stems.
Oh my gosh, that's okay.
I was like, I just started pulling them off. I'm like, oh crap, I just did the whole thing because I wanted everything cut. But
yeah, don't worry. Do not. And this is one of those recipes that's super forgiving, so don't even sweat it. And a lot of times Swiss chard stems are soft enough that, you know, they do cook up pretty quickly, so don't sweat it. That's okay. Good. All right, so let's talk about our broth that we're using. So I'm using vegetable broth, which we know notoriously can be higher in sodium. And sodium, salt intake is something that we want to be able to control in our kitchen, in our recipes that we're using, especially for those that have high blood pressure, are being mindful of their heart health. You know, that is certainly something that we want to keep to a minimum. So when you are looking for a broth recipe, which you could use chicken as well, always looking for either that low sodium label or a no added salt, which you can find some stocks and broths with. And that means there's no added salt, so you won't find any in the box, so we can really control. If it's low sodium, anything that has low sodium on the front of the package by law has to have 140 milligrams of sodium or less per serving. So this actually has 135, so it got through by the skin of its teeth. But that is what is considered low sodium. So it calls for 6 cups. So we've got 4 here and I've got 2 more here. So let's add this in. And I like adding those first 2 cups giving a little bit of a stir because we're sort of going to deglaze the bottom of our pan. So anything that was sort of sticking to it, we can use our spatula to sort of pull up any of those bits to just deglaze that. All right. And then the rest of our 4 cups go in. Now, keep the other 2 cups handy, because if you feel like you need to add more liquid, you can certainly add some more broth. You could also add some more water. So there's plenty of flavor to be had in this recipe. So our 4 cups go in. We will bring this up to a boil. We'll turn it down and let it simmer to let those potatoes cook. We'll come back, we'll add some more seasoning, we'll add some more ingredients, we'll add our Swiss chard leaves, we'll let it go for a little bit longer, and then we'll finish it and we will enjoy it. So I'm gonna let this go one more stir. Just keep our eye on it. And actually, I am going to add a little bit of salt, pepper to this initial step while it cooks. So let's just give it a little bit of flavoring now. Okay. Good. All right. And this comes together really quickly. So I also love this for a weeknight meal. It's great for, you know, busy families, busy households. Okay. Before we move on to our stir fry, any questions about our cauliflower, which looks good? We've got a few minutes left there, or our soup?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, perfect. And Michelle has been linking all of the recipes in the chat. So again, keep an eye out for those. You can pull them out, but you'll also see them on our Food for Thought page. So let's move on to our 3rd recipe, also cueing Deborah for this as well. So we are going to make a lemongrass tofu stir fry. Absolutely delicious. So for this, I am using a wok. So I have this big wok here. If you do not have this, know that any sort of larger saute pan would be perfectly fine as well. So I'm going to turn my wok on heat. I'm going to start it a little bit lower just to start to get it warm, and I will eventually bring this up from heat. The first thing I want to do is prep my tofu. Here's my tofu. So this is how I press tofu. So for those that may be unfamiliar, when you buy it in the store, it sits in some liquid. And so when you're using it, you have to press some of that liquid out so that you get a good bake, you get a good fry. And so this is a great way to do it. So you can certainly buy a tofu press on like Amazon and kitchen stores, but I don't really need all that extra jazz. All I use, oh, geez Louise. Something heavy on top. So I have a big cast iron pan. I have my brick of tofu surrounded by paper towels. You could use a kitchen towel as well. We'll unwrap this and set this aside, and then we'll cube this up. So here's our brick. Let me just set this aside. And sorry for the loud noise. Be careful of a little bit of suction. And then we will cut this up. So while I'm doing this, I feel like this is a really great opportunity to talk about soy and phytoestrogens with breast cancer, because tofu, as we know, is among some of the highest, is a food that's among the highest containing foods of phytoestrogens. I'm going to take a pause and check my cauliflower. And I'll show you what this looks like. Oh, it looks great. Okay. We're really starting to get that yellow color from the turmeric. So this looks great. I'm gonna really gingerly give this a little zhuzh. And back in the oven. So we do want this to be a pretty even layer. Gonna get this mixed around. And then I'm gonna put this back in for another 15 minutes. All the times that I have made this, it's how much I usually, that's the timing that usually works best for me. So back in 15 minutes and I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Okay.
Erin, I have a question about the tofu.
Yeah.
Could you also use a cheesecloth, or is that too many holes? Like, do you need something more?
A little bit more absorbent. So
Yes,
paper
that's
towels
the
work
word.
well, kitchen towel works well, absolutely. Yeah. So it's not quite as absorbent for all of the moisture that's typically in this, but great suggestion. Okay, so tofu, tempeh, miso, edamame are all soy foods among the highest available to us that contain phytoestrogens. And historically, research pointed at the thought that phytoestrogens, which are plant estrogens, caused cancer cells, hormone receptor positive, estrogen receptor positive cancer cells to grow. That was older research done in mice, and that really has since been debunked. And we do know that phytoestrogens are actually very protective against the development of breast cancer. When we're looking at Asian cultures and their incidence of breast cancer, we do find that it is significantly less than what we see here in the United States. And part of that is because they are incorporating foods like tofu, tempeh, miso into their diet. So it's very anti-inflammatory, very protective, and is a healthy addition to add to any person's diet. Now, we also know that the discussion around soy foods can be really stress causing, anxiety provoking. And there is no food on the planet that is worth consuming with that degree of stress. So if this is something that in your mind you've already decided, I don't want to include tofu, I want nothing to do with it, I don't feel comfortable eating it, that's perfectly fine, because guess what? You could substitute this with anything. If you want to use, make some chicken and use that as your protein source for this, by all means, go for it. If you want to use some kind of bean, if you want to make some fish and add that, or shrimp or some sort of shellfish, by all means, you could do that as well. So please know that while we love to incorporate these foods into our recipes and into our cooking, what truly matters is your comfort level at the end of the day, and there's always an option. There's always something available to you. So, but for today, we'll be using some tofu. And I know we have a really great blog on our website about soy foods and phytoestrogen. So Michelle, if you're able to grab that, if not, we can always send it out later. But I wrote that with one of our medical advisors, and it was just sort of reviewing some of the new research and debunking some of those myths that people think about. So with that being said, let's brown our tofu to get started. So I am going to turn my wok up higher. I am using a high heat oil for this. Thanks, Michelle. So I am using a canola oil. It's got a higher smoke point. It's great for things like stir fry, because we're usually cooking at a higher heat. I'm also going to turn my vent up a little bit. So Michelle, tell me if that gets a little loud. We're going to be cooking on high heat. So I have my tofu. I want to be really ginger about how I'm adding it, because I don't want it to splatter on me. Oh, let me add my oil first and foremost. So I'm looking at about a tablespoon. And then let's add our tofu. So just be really ginger that you don't want it to splatter. You don't want to burn yourself. So it's starting to sizzle right away, which is great. And it'll brown up nicely. There we go. Perfect. So I've got my spatula. Just going to create a single layer here. We'll let these brown. I'll come back to this. I'm working at about a medium high right now. I'll come back to this and move these around a little bit. And then we'll keep browning them. And then after that, we'll take them out of the pan. We'll add our veggies in. We'll let them cook, and it'll come together really nicely. Before we do that, let's look at some of our other ingredients that we want to prep to add flavor to our lemongrass. So I've got some ginger root here that we will grate in once that tofu comes out. So I've got a big piece of ginger root. I removed the skin. I will use my microplane to grate this right into my wok. So this will add great ginger flavor. Of course, we've got some garlic here. So I will also be grating 3 cloves of garlic. And then one of the stars of our show is lemongrass. So let's look at lemongrass. So if anyone has never seen the actual stalk, this is what it looks like. So you'll see it almost resembles like a leek, sort of. So you've got a slightly greener top. We're going to use this bottom piece, and then I'll show you how to use it. So this recipe calls for just 2 stalks. So that I did chop up one earlier today. So let's work on this. Before I do, let me just check my tofu. Looks great. I'm starting to see some browning, which is great. So we're just going to keep moving this around. Great. Okay, good. We'll let that go. All right. So the first thing we want to do is, because we're only using this bottom part, we're going to cut off about here. And unfortunately, we're going to discard this. So we'll set this aside. And then I'm also going to cut the bottom edge off as well. Now, what we do next, I'm going to set this over here, is there is a harder outer layer that we want to remove. So a lot of times I will use just a little paring knife just to very gingerly slice down the outside. And you want to get to a more tender inner layer. And you'll immediately start to notice that really bright lemony lemongrass flavor that we have come to really love in recipes like stir fries. Now, I also know that lemongrass is not the easiest ingredient to find. So here's a couple substitutions. So one, just as I mentioned, ginger paste, garlic paste, this is a Wegmans brand, I found lemongrass stir-in paste. So you could absolutely substitute this, keep this in your fridge. I found this in the produce section. This would be a wonderful substitution. You can also leave out the lemongrass altogether. There's plenty of flavor. This is delicious on its own. So do not fret if you cannot find this in your grocery store or at your local produce market. It's okay, no big deal. All right, so I'm just gonna go back. This looks great. Just gonna make sure we're moving all of those pieces around so we get some even browning. Good. All right, and then let's chop our lemongrass. I'm just gonna thinly slice it. Deborah, let me know how you're doing as well, how your stir fry's coming along, how everything smells and looks. Excited to hear how your dinner is tonight.
We got a thumbs up from Deborah.
Excellent. All right, so
She's
thinly
busy
sliced.
scooting around the kitchen.
I love it. And then we're just going to give it a good little chop here. Oh my gosh. So we'll add our lemongrass. Once our tofu comes out, we'll add our garlic, our ginger. We'll let it sort of heat through some additional oil, lemongrass, and then we'll add our veggies in. So we're just going to set that aside and we'll come back to that. All right. Great. Let's see how we're doing. I'm also going to stir my soup. Oh, this looks great. And for those that maybe tofu is not their favorite because of texture, I know that I'm certainly a texture person. Browning it adds like a really nice crunch, like a really nice crispy texture. So in a tofu, it holds up well as it continues to cook, as we add our veggies to it. So this really does change the texture nicely. All right, I'm gonna let this go for just like another little bit. Let's stir our soup. This looks great. So good. We'll let that go for another couple minutes before we add some more ingredients to that as well. So good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the vegetables that will go in our stir fry. So let me grab these. So this is where you can also really be creative with what you want to use. So you'll see here that I prepped some broccoli, cruciferous, carrots, red peppers, and I also have some Napa cabbage that I sliced up here. So you can use whatever kind of vegetables you have in your crisper drawer. You can use whatever kind of vegetables you like. So feel free to kind of be creative and use up things that maybe you are looking to work through before they hit the trash can. I will be adding these ingredients in first before I add my cabbage because this will cook up much quicker, okay? So let me check my tofu. We'll likely pull that off of heat. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna turn my heat off. I have a plate here and let's just use some tongs to pull our tofu off. We're gonna add this back in at the end, but there is really nice browning. Of course, if you wanted them to be a little bit browner, you could leave them on for just a little bit longer, but you see they do cook up quickly. So again, like another great weeknight meal, really quick to throw together. Perfect. So here's our browned tofu. You see that? Great. All right, we'll set this aside. We'll come back to that. Now, let's turn our wok back on low heat. We're going to add another tablespoon of that high heat oil. So I'm going to add that. Now, the reason I'm starting at a lower heat is because I don't want to burn my garlic and my ginger as we add it in. So let me first start with grating the garlic in. Again, using my microplane, we're going to grate this right in. If you burn garlic, there's no coming back from it. Yeah, so if you feel like this is a little hot, there we go. And then number 3. So we really just want to infuse the oil with that garlic flavor. Good. Now let's grab our piece of ginger root. So again, we're going to just grate this right in. I know a lot of our members are struggling with neuropathy and using something like a microplane or a garlic press may be really hard on your hands to sort of grip and press. So again, sort of those pastes are a really great convenience option. They're really great on the budget because you get a lot of servings from them. So that is great. Our garlic goes in. Our ginger goes in. Just scrape all this off. Get all that delicious flavor. Beautiful. And then we'll add our lemongrass. And we're just letting this go for 30 seconds, 45 seconds at most. Again, we just want that to infuse. This looks great. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit more so I can start to smell it and it becomes aromatic. This is going to be great. Good. And in goes our vegetables. So good. So we're going to start with those heartier vegetables. Broccoli, peppers. Make sure. Yeah. Great. Carrots. So good. Let's give this a stir to get everything mixed. Try to bring up those garlic ginger pieces from the bottom. So they're infusing that flavor. I'm going to quick make the sauce for this, and then we'll check on our cauliflower. Great. So we'll let that cook. Okay. Quick sauce for our stir fry. Easy, easy, easy. My oven is out of view, so Deborah, that's okay. All right, quick stir fry sauce. I've got half a cup of vegetable broth here. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Again, if you don't want to use soy sauce, coconut aminos and tamari are 2 wonderful substitutions. And then I've got 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. That's a really great thickener. Use your whisk and whisk this all together. Once everything is combined, we'll just set this aside. It's quite liquidy, as you can see here. As it cooks, we'll let this cook for a few minutes in the wok when we add it, and it'll thicken up nicely. Beautiful. All right, so let's set this aside. We'll come back to it. Let me check my collie. Yeah, that's great. All right. Looks great. Golden yellow, so good. I will plate this in a moment. I'll tell you how I enjoy this. But first I want to add a couple more ingredients to our soup. So I'm going to set this aside to come back to it in just a moment. And then let's add some more finishing ingredients to our soup. So we've let it cook for 15 minutes. So our potatoes have tenderized. So let's keep going to keep building flavor. So the next thing that we're going to add are our Swiss chard leaves. So my whole bowl will go in. And while this seems like a lot, if anyone has ever made or added a green to anything, once it cooks down, it's like nothing. So let's do that. Good. And then we're adding a can of fire roasted tomatoes. So that goes in. We're adding a can of white beans. So this is Great Northern cannellini beans. They are drained and rinsed. So we've got some good protein there. We're gonna add some salt, pepper, probably just a little bit more in a little bit. Actually, I have some salt and pepper here. So among our other seasonings, I've got some salt, pepper, paprika, and I will be grating a fresh nutmeg right into it, again, with that microplane. So got a little more salt, pepper, paprika, and then let's grate some nutmeg. If you don't have, sugar. If you don't have an actual nutmeg, no worries, just 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg is great. There we go. All right. Let's stir to get everything cooking and mix. This looks great. And we'll let this keep going. Our leaves will cook down. I am going to get a little bit more broth to add to this because as you'll see, it's quite thick. And I want to add a little bit more broth to it. So let me go grab that out of my refrigerator. This is where you can eyeball that. I'm just gonna turn the heat up a little bit. All right. And we'll bring this up to a simmer again and we'll let it keep cooking.
Erin, were the fire roasted tomatoes, were they diced tomatoes or like
Yes.
a stewed? Okay.
They were, Michelle, thank you. And you know what, if you can't find a fire roasted,
That was
a
my
regular
next
diced
question.
tomato can be great. If you've got tomatoes from the garden as well, like crush those up and add them in also. That would be great. I know we're still sort of enjoying those end of summer veggies. Okay, even though technically it's still summer. Okay. All right, so our stir fry looks great. We're starting to get bright green in our broccoli. I'm gonna throw some cabbage in here and we'll keep cooking that. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. This just adds a really nice crunch. Again, another cruciferous veggie that just adds some wonderful nutritional boost. Let's get this mixed in.
Erin,
And
Deborah put in the chat, she makes her own fire roasted tomatoes.
oh my
So
gosh, I love that.
yeah,
Right.
so
What
we'll
is
talk
your
about that.
recipe?
That's what
Absolutely,
I said.
Michelle. You
What's
took
the
the words right
recipe?
out of my mouth.
I totally wing it every time, but I've got tomatoes coming out my ass from the garden. So between salsa and fermented salsa and fire roasted, I will send you guys something though.
Totally. Love that. Love that. So yeah, you can do it on your own. If you have them, use what you have. Okay. That looks great. So our
Did I put my
stir-fried veggies.
in the soup or no?
Say that one more time.
Did I put the spices in the soup yet? The paprika?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, put that in
Okay.
when as you add your tomatoes and beans, and that'll sort of finish it out as we simmer for these last few minutes. All right. So my veggies are continuing to start cooking. I'm going to add my sauce to this because I don't want my veggies to cook too much. I still want them to have a little bit of texture. So let's add that delicious stir fry sauce we made. And like I said, as this cooks over the next couple minutes, this will thicken. All right, so we'll let that go. Once it thickens, we'll add our tofu in, we'll get everything well incorporated, and then it's ready to serve. So this is coming along nicely. So I'll let that go. Our soup will let cook a little bit as I'm making a mess over here. We'll keep going back to our soup to let this simmer. And then quickly, let's make our pesto because this comes together in absolutely no time at all. So that soup looks great. All right, so we're gonna make a quick kale basil pesto. So this is a great way. If you are not a fan of kale, whether it's sauteed, whether it's kale chips that you've tried to make, if you're adding them to a smoothie and you're like, oh, I still can't stand it, make it into a pesto because it will be a wonderful addition, but you'll still get that beautiful basil flavor that we all love. So with that being said, the first thing we're going to do is blanch our kale. So blanching it helps to cook it just a little bit. And so it softens it a little bit, still keeps that bright green color. So what you'll notice is this will be a vibrant green color. So I've got my curly leaf here. So I've got the curly leaf kale removed from the stem that we are going to blanch for 2 minutes. So to blanch, I've got a pot of boiling water here. I also have a large bowl that has some cold water in it that I'm going to grab some ice cubes while this is blanching. We're essentially making an ice bath. So I've got a slotted spoon that I will use. So my salted water that's boiling back here. Turn that up. Let's add our kale. And we've got 2 minutes on the clock. Just enough. You can blanch lots of different vegetables. So this is a really great demonstration for blanching lots of different vegetables. Asparagus, green beans, other type of hearty vegetables. 53. All right, so we're going to give this 2 minutes. I'm going to scoot over and get a big glass of ice to add to my bowl of water so that it creates a nice little ice bath over here. And we'll take our boiling cooking kale, we'll add it to our ice bath and it will stop the cooking. Wonderful. All right. I'm going to check my stir fry. So now we're just in checking mode. All right, so I'm going to check my stir fry over here. This looks really great. I'm going to add my tofu to this. Turn my heat down a little bit. Get everything well coated, and our stir fry is just about done. Let's add this in. So good. Oh, this looks great. So we're just gonna get this well incorporated and heated through, and this is just about done. I'm also going to turn my vent down a little bit so it's not so high. But let me turn this down. There we go. You see the kale is getting really bright green. That's great. We're almost there. So good. Let's give turn my soup down a little bit. This looks great. The soup is almost done and everything is coming together. All right, 2 minutes, done. Kale is off. Let me grab my oven mitts just to make sure. Include this here. And what I like to do is just move this out of the way. Move this nice and close. Okay. There we go. Now don't drain your blanching water because we're going to use that for our pesto. And for this, essentially everything just comes together in the blender after this. So this is your hardest, this is the hardest job. This is the initial step. And it's not even hard, but this is your most involved step, I should say. All right, good. It was great. All right. So we'll just move this around. Move this back out of the way. Good. And our kale is like instantly chilled. So let's start blending. I'm going to turn my stir fry off because I can pretty much guarantee it's done. And you do want to use a high-speed blender. So I have a Vitamix here. So the first thing we'll do is take our kale. We're going to squeeze that cold water and everything goes in the blender. All right. And then I will be using half a cup, probably a little bit more, of our blanching broth. So that will help to bring some really good flavor. Remember that blanching broth was salted. So you want to be mindful of how much salt you're adding. Definitely taste this first. All right, so all my kale is in. I'll set this aside. Now I've got basil, right? The base of almost any pesto. So I've got 2 cups of fresh basil leaves here. And I will tell you, if you freeze this pesto and then you pull it out in the middle of winter, it will bring you right back to summer. It's really amazing. So we've got that will go in. And then I've got half a cup here. I'm just gonna grab, like I said, half a cup of our blanching liquid. That goes right in. All right. So we'll blend this. I may need the stick. So this will be step 1. Let me make some space over here. High-speed blender. All right. Let's add this and then let's get started. An initial for the blend, then we'll add the rest of our ingredients. Great. Okay. Initial blend. So let's add to this. So we've got a few things. First, garlic. As you can imagine, we are never far from it. Michelle, I feel like you and I need to be called like the garlic sisters because we use so much, but this is also very traditional in a basil pesto, right?
It's delicious. And even though I use so much basil in my recipe, garlic, it still wasn't enough. I still could have kept going.
I know, I know. Okay, I've got some black pepper here and a heaping tablespoon of nutritional yeast. So this is a vegan recipe, and usually we would find Parmesan, but as a substitute, but also something that adds a little bit of saltiness, some umami flavor. We add nutritional yeast. And then I've got, again, a heaping tablespoon of white miso, which is also a soy-based fermented product, which you could absolutely leave out if you did not want to include that. We are going to add a little bit of lemon. I'm going to add that now. I'm going to start with the juice of half a lemon, add a little bit more of our blanching broth, and then we're going to blend until it's smooth. All right, lid goes back on. Oh, I forgot my liquid. Hold on, let me do that. Add that right to the, there we go. I usually end up using about a full cup. That's what we'll go with. There we go. All right, let's see how we look. Ooh, that looks good. Okay, so this is where you can give it a taste and sort of adjust the flavorings from here. If you want a little bit of a brighter lemon flavor, you could add some zest. If you feel like it needs a little bit more salt or pepper, you could do that. Oh, that's good. Oh, no, that's perfect. Wow, that's delicious. Okay, so I'll set this aside. Scrape the sides down. And actually, I'm going to give this one more blend because I do want all these bits to get in here. A little spatula. And then we'll grab the rest of our stuff and we will finish all of this. There we go. Okay, one more final blend. I don't quite need my stick, but I will need a little lid top. And you can see it's maintaining that beautiful green color because we blanched everything. So let's move that over. Here we go. Okay, that looks great. All right, so let me show you. You could, of course, use this right away. If you wanted to cook some pasta in that blanching water, you would bring everything together. Usually I like to store this. Again, you can add this to an ice cube tray and freeze it and just pop a couple ice cubes out in the middle of winter. It would be delicious. Look at that bright, beautiful green color. It is to die for. Okay. We'll set that over there. So we've got our pesto. Let me go grab our cauliflower. I'll show you how I like to serve that. So I like to garnish that with some fresh cilantro. Okay. And a little bit of a surprise here is some feta. This is so good. All right. Perfect. Let me grab some feta, cut up some cilantro. Right. That looks great. We'll break some leaves off. You don't like cilantro? Don't worry. Parsley would be a wonderful substitution. I've also got chives here, so you could use them as well. Okay. Okay. Roasted cauliflower. So good. And then let's plate our stir fry. So you could serve this traditionally over rice or noodles. I like to have my stir fry with a little bit of rice. I have a lemon wedge here that I will, I'll use this. So good. Oh my gosh. Delicious. My stir fry. Oh, so good. I just squeeze a little bit of lemon on top.
That looks beautiful.
So good, right? Like delicious. And then that. Let's grab, we're actually going to finish our soup. So let's turn it off from heat. We'll give it one more stir. And we'll finish it with the other half of the juice of the lemon. And the reason why we're adding the acid at the end, so acid does a lot in a recipe. And one thing it does is really brighten flavor. So if you're ever making something and it just feels like it's lacking something, or it's bland, it's kind of missing something, add a little bit of acid, lemon or lime juice, a vinegar, you only need like a tablespoon, so not much at all. So we'll use the other half of this lemon just to brighten everything at the end. We'll mix it all together and then we'll get this ladled. And of course, I like to enjoy this topped with a little bit of Parmesan. But you can leave that out altogether if you want to keep this entirely vegetarian. Here is my, here it is. Beautiful. A little bit of Parmesan right on top. And our Swiss chard and potatoes. Ooh, let me clean that bowl. Oh my goodness. A little bit of drippage there. Okay. Swiss chard and potatoes. Ooh, so good. Our roasted cauliflower, bright yellow from that turmeric. We love that. Green of our pesto, and of course the rainbow of our stir fry. So good. All these beautiful cruciferous veggies. So with that, Deborah, let me check in, see how you're doing, see if you tasted everything, how it is.
Here's my stir frying cauliflower on one plate.
Let me scoot over there. Let me say, it looks great.
Sprigs on the side. There's my
Oh, how about that?
Perfect.
ladle. Can I just mention my kick-ass ladle?
That is a good one. That looks like an official one. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. Well done. All right. Very good. So any questions about our recipes, our ingredients, substitutions, any questions at all before we wrap for the evening?
No questions.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, hopefully this gave you some new ideas on how to use some of your favorite cruciferous vegetables. Know that, again, all of the recipes are located at uniteforher.org/food for thought. So feel free to go grab them, although Michelle popped them in the chat as well. If you make them on your own, we encourage you to do so. Let us know what you think, good, bad, and different. If you've switched it up a little bit, let us know how you were creative and how you made it your own. And then hopefully we will see you in a future virtual cooking class. Be sure to check out Aubrey's snack attack cooking class. She's making really great healthy snacks. She brought some into the office and they were delicious. So I think Michelle and I can both attest to that. So thank you so much for spending your Thursday night. Oh, Nancy, thanks so much for being here. Hopefully we'll see you in a future class. Deborah, enjoy dinner. I hope if there's others in your household, you can share with them. But thank you so much for cooking along, and everyone have a really great night. Aw. So good. My gosh, so great. I can't believe Deborah made her own fire roasted tomatoes. What a great idea.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Wonderful.
I know, right?
Because
Okay.
sometimes they can be hard to find in the grocery store. It's like hit or
Yeah, I
miss.
know.
So
I know. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. It's funny. So, all right, wonderful. Well, thanks, Michelle.
you're welcome.
And enjoy the rest of your night. Say hi to Antonio.
I will. I will. Is Kiki Lee with you?
She is. She's off. She's off around
Gallivanting.
somewhere. Yeah. So hiding somewhere. So
So cute.
yeah.
All right. Well, have a good evening.
You too. Thanks, Michelle.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.